Today I'm going to talk to you about one of the most impressive vegetables in the garden, a perennial vegetable, a star among stars, namely elephant garlic. And first of all, why is it called elephant garlic? Well, it's because of its size, which is quite out of the ordinary. At Cagnol Farm, they managed to get a head of garlic that weighs over 500 grams. That's huge. 550 grams, that's enormous. There's an Australian who managed to get a head of garlic weighing over 1 kilo, and that's just gigantic. If you're interested in this vegetable, in this video, we're going to cover everything about how to grow it, how to propagate it as much as you like, and how to consume it. Let's get started. A quick bit of history to start. I promise I'll be brief and we'll add a little twist. First of all, this garlic isn't really garlic actually. Botanically, it's more like a leek, or rather it's exactly a leek, Allium ampeloprasum, its Latin name, which is also the Latin name for perennial leek. So elephant garlic is a variety of perennial leek, and actually you'll notice this quickly if you let it flower, because it's exactly the same flower as the leek, just much bigger. And by the way, if you grow them, I recommend leaving at least a few of them. Let them flower. Not only are they beautiful in the garden, but they're also great for biodiversity. They attract many insects, so it's good to keep them blooming. Even though, as you'll see, not everyone always agrees with that. By the way, if you want to know more about the different wild garlics and leeks, I'll point you to a video I've already made on the subject. This elephant garlic is actually a particular variety of perennial leek. That explains its milder taste compared to regular garlic, since it has less sulfur and is less pungent. Still, it looks nothing like a leek. Here we really have the garlic bulb with the cloves forming. Another thing it has in common with the perennial leek is that it will form around the bulb and its cloves. It forms small underground bulbules which can be used for propagation in a unique way. We'll discuss this soon. Alright, that's it for the background. Now let's get to the heart of the matter and see how to grow it. When it comes to growing elephant garlic, the good news is that it's much easier to grow than regular garlic. It can tolerate soils that are sometimes a bit more challenging, and above all, it's less likely to catch diseases. Diseases like rust, which we sometimes find on garlic or leeks, it's more resistant, a bit easier to grow. And to start a crop, there are different ways. Either you start from cloves, which is the most common way, and you plant them from October or November. Or you can start from plants sold at the nursery. In fact, we still have some available at the nursery right now, and so we sell them as rooted plants already in pots. But the most common way is still to start from cloves. From cloves that we plant in the ground in October, these cloves, we put them in the soil, we bury them. Deeper than for garlic, we plant it at about 5 to 10 centimeters deep, because it likes to be grown fairly deep. And to be honest, I think it's mainly for stability. It makes a plant that can be quite impressive, especially when it starts to flower. So there you go, bury the bulbs well, much deeper than you would for regular garlic. For the type of soil it likes, as I said, it's not necessarily very picky, but it won't really like waterlogged soils. If you have soil that's too silty or too clayey, which might stay too wet, you'll risk splitting and rot. So for soils like that, it's better to enrich them with organic matter, and it will appreciate soils that are quite rich in organic matter. Just for water circulation, you need fairly well-drained, light soils. As for exposure, generally it's grown in rather sunny spots like we do. Here we have a few trees that provide some shade, but it's fine in the sun, though you can also grow it in partial shade. It's not too picky about that. And that will allow you to grow it in orchards at the base of berry plants. Apparently it works really well, even at the base of grapevines. And by the way, it would even have an effect on the health of other plants thanks to the sulfur it contains, which will release a bit into the soil and make the surrounding plants more resistant to diseases caused by fungi, like mildew on grapevines, for example. I don't have much experience with that yet, but I'll talk to you about it soon. The growing cycle completes in 8 to 9 months. You plant it in October or November and harvest in June or July. It starts to flower in March or April. After that, opinions differ. Many people will tell you different things. If you want to have a good bulb production, it's better to remove the flowers. However, if you're also growing it for biodiversity, it's still good to let a few of them flower. What we do in our fields is leave a flower here and there because it's really beautiful. It's good for biodiversity, so I like to leave them. Mainly, I want to compare plants with and without flowers to see how much larger bulbs and cloves get when flowers are removed. As I mentioned, opinions vary. Some people will tell you different things. If you leave the flowers, you'll just get a big bulb, but you won't get a big head with the different cloves. Well, I don't necessarily believe that, so what I suggest is you try it at home and you'll see the difference for yourself. And if you want to see a visual example, go check out this video from the Jardin des Fraternités Ouvrières about their elephant garlic harvest. And you can see that they harvest it in August when the flower has wilted, so there are flowers on it, and you can clearly see that the heads that come out are quite big with large cloves. So do as you like, but give it a try. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to test it, and I'll talk to you about it again this summer. We'll see how it goes then. There's another reason to remove the flowers. The flowers are edible, so when the flower buds appear, you can still pick a few to eat. And then you'll see if those heads are bigger at harvest, and that'll be good for the harvest. So that'll be in June or July. In general, it's said that when the foliage is 2/3 dry, rather than talking about a specific time period, you really want to observe the plant. When the foliage is 2/3 dry, that's the time to harvest. If you harvest too early, there's a risk that the head won't be fully ripe and it won't keep as well. So that's a shame. And on the other hand, if you harvest too late, you risk having the head, not the cloves, but at least the base, start to rot a bit. And so the cloves won't hold together as well. Drying is less convenient since cloves can fall off. Drying works best when you harvest once 2/3 of the foliage is dry. Harvesting is the same as regular garlic. You're going to clean it a bit, let it dry. It needs to be really dry so it stores better. And once it's well dried, you'll be able to store it for several months without any problems. Just make sure it doesn't freeze if you're drying them outside in a dry, well-ventilated area. When winter comes around November, remember to bring them inside to keep them warm so you can store them all winter long. Also remember to keep a few cloves in October or November to plant them again. If you're just starting a crop and you don't have many, eat a little to taste them but replant a good portion. That way you can keep repeating your cycles and have as many as you want. As for propagation, there are several methods. You can use seeds, which you can find in stores. Personally, I'm not really a fan of growing from seed. There are quite a few people who say that sometimes the seeds don't sprout, and even if the seeds do sprout, since it's a variety of wild leek, there's a chance it could cross with wild leek and you could lose the real elephant quality, the big bulb. So I would always choose vegetative propagation, so anything except sowing, in other words, the vegetative methods. It's going to be, as I was saying, by the cloves. It forms a head with several cloves and each clove will produce a new plant. And I was also saying that around the heads, it will produce small bulbils like all wild leeks, so you can collect these bulbils to multiply them. If you leave these bulbils in the ground when you harvest them, these bulbils will sprout naturally, but they won't sprout until after 2 or 3 years. They never sprout the following year. You can either leave the bulbils in the ground when harvesting or plant them in different spots, repeating this each year. After 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years, you'll have them everywhere and you can harvest from them. However, if you want to go faster using these bulbils and replant them so they grow back right away, well, these bulbils, when you take them out of the ground, remove the first skin and you'll see that when you take it off, you'll have a first layer that's really thick, kind of like wood. That's why they take a long time to sprout. So once you've removed that first layer, you can replant them or put them in pots to get seedlings started in a nursery. You'll get something that sprouts immediately. So it's really the first outer layer that you need to remove, which is very thick. It almost looks like wood on some of them. I even removed the second skin, but that wasn't really intentional. That's why they're white here. But even if they're like that, once we've just removed the first outer layer, the wood here is fine. It will come off with a knife, but just with your nails, it's so thick that it's not necessarily easy. You can really understand why it takes 2 years to decompose and be able to sprout. So these bulbs, you can prepare them between autumn and spring. If for the cloves you plant to get a good yield, it's better to plant in October or November, not too late, to have a good harvest. Here, the bulbs, the small bulbs, won't produce flowers or heads anyway. So the first year, even if you plant them a bit later than you should, it's not a big deal. In the end, you should know that from these small bulbs, you won't get a head right away. The first year, you'll get a kind of big bulb like a large onion. And it's this bulb, when you replant it the following year, that will produce a head with different cloves. It's a bit longer. Well, it takes a bit longer. It'll take an extra year, but it allows you to get more plants more quickly. As for consumption, now there are several ways to eat it, and I would say that depending on how you consume it, it falls somewhere between a condiment and a vegetable. It's not really garlic, since botanically it's a leek, which means its taste is a bit closer to leek and it can be eaten that way. For example, you can pick it before it forms its head, even before it flowers, and eat it, just like you would eat green garlic when it's young, and at that point you'll eat it like a leek. So be careful with that. If you eat it like green garlic, you know, green garlic is really the whole plant, and once the plant is eaten, that's the end of its story. It won't grow back. Some people will give you advice about this. Instead of pulling it out completely, cut it above its base, above the stump, so it can grow back. Well, I'm not necessarily a fan of this method, because if you cut it at the base, it will grow back, it will make new leaves. But all the energy it uses to make new leaves is energy it won't put into its bulb. As a result, you'll harvest a bulb in the end, but it will be smaller than if you had let it develop fully. So if anything, just grow a lot of them. Pull some of them out completely to eat them when they're yellow like leeks, and then let the others grow to get bulbs, but cut them and then let them grow back afterwards. You lose a little bit in production, so for me it's not necessarily the best way to do it, but everyone does as they like. So if you eat the leaves and the stem, it's going to be similar to leek and you eat it like a vegetable. The flower, as I said, can also be eaten like a vegetable. It's less spicy than garlic, but it's stronger than leek. And you'll see it's actually quite interesting in terms of taste, and also the head that we'll harvest at the end of the season. Like garlic, in terms of taste, it's a bit milder than regular garlic. It's a little less spicy, but it's still excellent. And you can use it in any recipe where you would use garlic. If you really like it, you can use much more. I'm not discussing its medicinal properties since that's not the focus of this video. It has similar but milder medicinal properties to garlic. However, I'm not a doctor, so I won't discuss that further. That's all about garlic and the bulbs. If you have questions, ask in the comments and I'll reply when I can. If you like the video, let me know. Give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel to catch upcoming videos. And if you like what I do, you can also support me financially through the Tipeee platform. I'll put a link somewhere in the description. Otherwise, just search for Le Jardin d'Emerveille on Tipeee. And thank you very much to everyone who does or will do it, without whom I wouldn't be able to take the time to do all this. All right, happy growing of garlic and elephant garlic and everything else too. See you very soon for the next video. Bye.